Hey, friends, this is Amia Freeman. I am back for another episode of the Momentum Focus podcast. And as always, I try my very best to bring you a conversation, whether it's myself giving you some insight of what God was having me sit with, even in the mucky stuff, or I get to share the microphone with someone who's doing work that represents the kingdom. Every conversation that we have here is with an invitation to help you to adjust your focus, to really consider what has your attention, what has your heart, where are your hands, and what does your community look like? Y'all know that focus here at Momentum Focus represents the phrase finish our commitments unapologetically stronger. And in this current season, we have really been diving into the message of our, because this podcast, the work that we're doing, none of it belongs to just us. It is a community effort of A, looking around the table to see if your community looks like you. B, are you actually stepping outside of your four walls to realize that the work that God has called you to do, to the Great Commission, it starts in your house, but it has to get outside of your four walls, whether that be your home or your church or your gym, wherever you are. Um, and oftentimes that means breaking down your expectation of what that community is supposed to look like. Um, so to carry out this conversation again, in the spirit of looking at what does our people look like, um, I have the honor of bringing on today's guest that I've been following his ministry work through an organization called Love Beyond Walls, which is based here in Atlanta. But I recently started understanding his heart and the work that he's doing in his personal feed through a fellow freedom fighter, I'll call her. Um, and it was because of 2020. So like for the people that say 2020 sucked, it did, like tremendously. But there was some beauty that came out of the ashes of that. Is the work done? Absolutely not. And I'm going to stay loud till the work is done. Probably not till Jesus comes back. But until then, we carry on. Y'all, today I get to share the stage, if you will, with Terence Lester. And Terence is, he's a speaker, an activist, an author, a thought leader. Y'all know I love that phrase because it kind of like stirs up some stuff in people. And his platform is on systemic poverty. And today, this conversation might go a little bit different than y'all are used to hearing here, but I can guarantee you this, that it's going to stay in the rhythm of what you've heard us talk about before. And that is adjusting our focus. Because if we're only thinking about it the way we've always thought about it, there is no change that's going to happen. There's no growth. Um, Change ain't change until it's changed, is one of my pastors taught me years ago. And sometimes that change rubs us like sandpaper, but it's smoothing out the rough stuff. So without further ado, I am going to turn the microphone over to Terence to let him really just kind of share his heart about the work that he's currently doing. And then we'll just dive into the conversation. So, Terence, welcome.
Amia, thank you so much for having me. It was just a pleasure to hear you talk about making connections and moving beyond the four walls and identifying your people. I think those are essential. And also, I think those are what really glorifies God. Um, for the last almost decade now, I have been doing the work of building longer tables to include our neighbors in our communities that are without an address. I like to frame my words by saying just because a person doesn't have an address doesn't mean that they're not your neighbor, right? That's grounded in the fact that we should be all about the whole community because I think that is the heartbeat of what God communicates through the scriptures. When Jesus came and gave his life, he didn't give his life for a specific class of people, people who have higher incomes than others. He didn't give his life for a particular group of people in terms of, one group of individuals who may be white or black or Asian American or Indian, etc. He gave his life for the world, and that is connected to this idea of what Martin Luther King was talking about in terms of using the phraseology "world house." I think what King was really trying to communicate is that we live in a global community, that the world is our address. There was a speech that he was given in 1967, one of his Christmas sermons, and he's communicating this idea that you can't wake up in the morning without having a global encounter, right?
Hmm.
Like, where did you get your coffee from? Who made the materials that provided your clothing, right? Your favorite piece of clothing. Where did your decor come from? I mean, we could push that to talk about who created the furniture in your house, or who created the cups, or your favorite pair of earrings. Where were they imported from? And so, to even exist and to breathe communicates that we're all interconnected, that God is a mosaic. God is much more diverse than we allow our minds to imagine. And so that informs a lot of the work that I do, because I'm really after affirming the dignity of those who have been excluded in society, who have been criminalized in many ways, and how laws and ordinances have communicated this message that because you are poor or houseless, that you are somehow lazy, or have a character flaw or some type of moral issue. I mean, I've met people living on the streets that know more Bible than people who grab a cup of coffee and sit in the service on Sunday mornings. And so there's real misconceptions and myths around what it means to live without an address. I mean, the fact that we worship a savior that experienced acute homelessness during his earthly ministry, but yet will in turn walk past someone without an address real time in modern society, says a lot about what we believe and how we believe it, right?
Yeah.
It's of my opinion that how you treat someone actually says a lot about what you're contributing to this world, but it also informs us of what's in your heart. And through the work of Love Beyond Walls, we have, provided community for individuals without an address, leveraging the power of community to help people get access to basic necessities, but also housing and job employment. But much more than that, having their stories humanized in a way that people have empathy and compassion towards people, um, using the framework of the Good Samaritan, have been left on the side of the road, half dead. Right?
Hmm.
How do we get people to stop walking by and take notice, come to where people are, and then sacrifice something? I don't think that you can really achieve justice or be effective or a contributor to the whole community if you are not sacrificing something. I mean, you think about it, none of us are self-made, right? We're all standing on the shoulders of those that have gone before us, and which also speaks to how we should also be about contributing to the fabric of social change, but also to the empowerment of our neighbor. That what I do for someone else, I'm also doing for myself. And so, been doing this work 8 years. Um, Really excited about it, and just grateful to have a conversation with you.
Yeah. No, I've been doing some recent study just on connectedness and recognizing that that's our part of our DNA, to want to belong and to want to be, both the wanting to belong and the birthright to belong, to be connected to people is just part of the imago Dei of God. Because if it was not true, then when he created man, he would not have said, "This is good." But then he realized, like, it's not good for him to be alone. So let me make this woman, and now they have each other, right? Um, and you mentioned, just I was just kind of reading just some of the background of your recent book, that community is the prerequisite to solve injustice. I wanted to camp there for just a second, because that idea of justice, I think, scares people to, like, go and do a work, right? Like, if you say, I want to do work in the work of justice, it scares people from a position of, I don't want to go alone, right? But then when we see people moving, we wonder, like, well, where do I fit in? Or little old me, how can I make a difference if I'm not, you know what I mean? If I'm not a part of a massive movement, how do I do something? But to know that we were wired to be connected to each other, to do this thing together, um, I would just love to hear your heart, and I don't want to call it advice, but your wisdom on, like, how do we help people to recognize that, like, that nudge that you feel inside of you, both for the being a part of something and to move in the direction of justice, like, don't ignore it. How do we help people move in that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So because I am a public policy student, doing a program, my PhD, I am wired to see justice issues as related to policy issues, and so the definition of public policy within itself is a system of laws or regulatory measures or courses of action that are put into place to benefit the populace, right, or the general public, right? So if there's an issue where, let's just say a traffic light, it doesn't hold long enough, and students walk across the street, and we've seen several students get hit by cars because the traffic light issue is causing this problem, right? Public policy seeks to define something that is irregular in society and come up with a law or some type of measure or a course of action to protect the right of the citizens, or to provide some type of right course of action, right? But then we have to understand, okay, well, who has access to the political process? Who are the actors or the officials that get a chance to make these decisions? Who are those, whose knowledge, right? Who does it benefit? In what ways does it benefit? Who are the problems in that are defined in the context of the policy that is being written? Who are the villains, right? Because every policy has a hero and a villain, right? And so when thinking about public policy, you also have to think about uh, policy analysis, right? And those persons who actually analyze what public policy is get a chance to not only look at the problem but come up with the best solutions, right? And so with the political process within itself, there are hidden power dynamics that we don't get a chance to see, right? Who is influencing these policies? Who are coming up with these rules? Who's analyzing it? And who does it benefit? And but also who does it disadvantage? Okay, in many ways, we have seen policies disadvantage communities of people. For instance, because my work is centered around people experiencing homelessness, we've seen laws and ordinances pop up all around the United States, banning people from standing or sitting in public places, sleeping in public places. Like there is a city, even in January, city council officials totally outright ban sleeping in public, period, right? Which violates the constitutional rights of practicing law, life sustaining activities if you don't have anywhere to go. Now, there are bed shortages all across the country. And if you don't have a bed, where else can you sleep if you don't have a place to sleep, right? And so there are ordinances that criminalize what it means to be homeless. And what I mean by criminalization of homelessness is that you are viewed through a criminal lens. Your very existence um, is viewed in a criminal way. And that spills over into the populace or the general public, where if a person is standing outside of a business, instead of seeing them as people going through problems, we see them as the problem. And so cities respond with hostile architecture, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on boulders, putting them underneath bridges to displace people, but not necessarily solving the issue. And the injustice in that is that we are treating people like trash versus treating people as human beings that's worthy of being affirmed, right? That's worthy of being included in the whole community. So when I see injustice in the world, I go, okay, who is firstly responsible, right? And what solutions need to be developed, and how can we have the greatest impact amongst those who a bad policy or some type of injustice is affecting? Well, we got to start with the community, because we have to say, who are the stakeholders in the community, who are we inviting to the table, and who are we excluding, who are we listening to in terms of how we should solve this solution? And in most cases, people who are actually providing problem solving skills to solutions aren't necessarily the people that are being affected, right? So how do we include even those persons who have been affected by whatever issue may be plaguing this community into the conversation to get the best empirical evidence, so to speak, to actually solve these problems? And so when I talk about justice is derived in community, I'm simply saying that it takes everyone. It takes the persons who have resources and the persons who don't have resources. It takes persons who have particular skill sets in one area and persons that have particular skill sets in another area. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to achieve the greatest possible potential for all of the populace or citizens to have equal access to be able to reach their God-given potential, right? If there is something that is posing a threat from you reaching your God-given potential, then how are we actually living out the gospel when Jesus says, I come to give you life and life more abundantly, right? We have to remove those barriers, right? So people can experience life more abundantly. And, when Jesus is also talking about loving your neighbor as you love yourself. Um, I've been known to talk about you can't love the neighbor unless you love the neighborhood that shaped that neighbor, right? And also you have to be concerned with the the issues that that neighborhood faces, right? You can't isolate a neighbor from their social location and then isolate social location from the neighbor. It's all one, right? It leads me to think about what Martin Luther King was talking about in his critique on the parable of the Good Samaritan. He talks about the man who is on the way from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he falls among thieves. Right, the very nature that he fell among thieves should lead us to question: well, why were there thieves in the environment? What was going on so wrong in Jericho that it produced the type of crime that would lead people on the side of the road half dead? And so I think even having a community of people that could really wrestle with the questions that we don't normally think about on the surface to help us like go deeper to achieve and arrive at some answers can help us to have the types of clues to know how we are needed in the fabric of this type of change that's needed, right? When we really sit with those questions and ask ourselves the questions that may lead us to some answers that are uncomfortable, but it also, when we sit with those uncomfortable answers, um, I think the disruption in itself should disrupt us, right? So we can become change agents, right? change doesn't happen without inconvenience. And I
Mm.
think sometimes people think that change will only happen in a vacuum. That will, if we theoretically think about change, or if we talk about it enough in a sermon, or if we, get with our friends who are just like us, then change will happen. No, change happens, like you said earlier, with friction, right?
Right.
There's no change without disruption. And I think a part of the process and entering into the space of community, we have to open ourselves up. We have to think deeper about issues related to injustice, right? Because injustice to your neighbor may not be injustice to you, but do you love your neighbor enough to allow the injustice that is affecting that neighbor to also affect you? Because you're called to love God with everything, but your neighbor as yourself, right? That's a different level of following Jesus, right? That he was touched with the infirmities of the woman with the issue of blood. He was touched so much that his friend died that he wept, right? Can we be touched in the same way, is what I'm posing? And then after we are touched, can we offer ourselves up to be a part of the community that creates the change?
Mm. Goodness. I'm trying to take notes while you're talking and my hands cramping because I could just literally turn the mic over to you and just let you talk because, man, just what you said there was just enough to teach 1,000 lessons. Even just the other day, I've been trying to post on Facebook just these thought provoking questions that really make people pause and look inwardly. And the other day, I posed that question of, is it possible to love your neighbor more than you love yourself? And I got a wide range of answers. Some of them were hyper religious, some of them were a hard yes, some of them were a hard no. And then there were the people that paused and said, in a performative way, yes, in a performative way to
Mm,
check the box and say, I did it.
wow. Yeah.
And then there were the people that said, if I don't love me, it's impossible for me to love my neighbor. And if I don't think anything's wrong with me, how could there possibly be anything wrong with my neighbor? To what you just said of an injustice to your neighbor may not be the injustice to yourself.
Mm, yes. That's such a great point, and I'm glad you are putting those types of questions out into the world, um, because we also have to to question whose love.
Hmm.
You know, it says love God with everything, right? Because we are responding to the love that God. The scriptures are clear. He first loved us, right? Right. I don't think we fully grasp what that love really entails. I think the best of our ability, we try to get as close as possible based upon how we've experienced love in our own personal lives. And that love looks different for so many different people. I mean, you think about the children that were abused, that were abandoned. People go through traumatic experiences, all sorts of different definitions or ideologies surrounding what love actually is, that I don't think our finiteness gives us a good picture of, you know, the love that God wants us to fully embody. And I'm not saying that, we're not practicing and trying to arrive at those places, but I think sometimes our own presuppositions or our existential experiences informs how we treat other people, right? um and that is something that we also need to consider. I mean, I think about my own self, and how I grew up in, as a child, the things that I experienced. It's hard sometimes, for me to even uh I'm getting a chance to love my kids in a way that I was never loved, right? Which is possible if you do the work. You go to counseling, you realize things that were missing, You develop skills and all of those things, but sometimes it still feels ironic, right? That I am giving away something that, a part of me never had. And a part of that is restorative, and what God is doing within me, but a part of it too is like you have to work to do that. It just doesn't show up.
Yeah.
Um, and you won't get it perfect always, but I think the goal that you're lifting up is that you try
Yeah.
and that you continue to lean in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just like the beauty of that, of just the redemptive restorative work of whether it's reparenting, being honest with what your own experience was, recognizing that your experience was not the totality of what life is, that there are so many other lived experiences, even in the fact that, like, my understanding of poverty is going to be different than someone else's understanding of poverty. And someone may have looked at my lived poverty, that I grew up in straight up poverty, and someone who actually lived in a position of poverty that's completely different than mine could very well look in my deep well of poverty and say, that was not poverty. You have no idea what poverty actually is, right? And not that we're here to compare poverty, right? But we are here to say that, like, just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean that it's not happening. The same with love, right? Because a person, to your point, a person that may have grown up in an abusive, um, loveless childhood, they don't have that to offer until they've actually received it themselves. So it is impossible to love their neighbor as they love themselves, right? And then also on the flip side of that coin is that a person who has lived in a home that maybe was just full of love, just full of Christ's love, parents, like all of it, you name it. It just was like the Cosby's on steroids. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and we're looking at it like, is that just TV love? Or, but because I had it in my house, but then they may still not know how to love a neighbor if the neighbor doesn't look like what they saw happening in their home. To literally look at someone else's story and say, that's not possible according to my lens, of even what you had said, of just the proximity that we allow ourselves to be within a community. It dictates our perception of what is, what isn't, what's possible, what's made up, what we thought we only heard in the news. You know what I mean? Because literally around the corner from you, across the street from you, could be someone living way beneath what you are living, whether we're looking at monetary poverty or heartbrokenness, mental, you know. Um, and I love that you have, everything you've said, you keep coming back to the gospel to help people to recognize that this is not a man-made conversation or somebody, soapboxing, that this is the gospel, this is the ask of God, this is the commission of Christ, that we would also love others the way that he's loved us, and even
Yeah.
just that message of loving God with our whole self. That's my verse of the year of Deuteronomy 6:4-6, that the Lord is one and you shall love him with all of who you are. And to know that the root of that scripture, which is echoed in the New Testament, it is not just hearing with our ears, but it's an obedience. It's a call to just this oneness of yourself, calling other people into it, and then coming together to move in the direction of Christ. Um, yeah, man, there's so many other directions that I want to go in this conversation. um, I don't know, you mentioned something in our conversation, and I saw this even on your Instagram feed, that homelessness is not a crime. And that, when I read it, like, my heart sank, because to know that people are criminalized for the simple fact of we don't know their story. And I remember going out on a community service project once, and my husband asked a gentleman, who looked to be the age of one of my kids. My kids are college age. And he asked the gentleman, like, what's going on? And the guy just, his head immediately dropped in shame. And just to like to see him, all I could think was that was my son that made a wrong decision and now he's out on the street. What's the crime? What's the crime? And am I not willing to give him a second chance where I would want mercy and a second chance on something that I did wrong?
Yeah. Um, I think there has been it's called the um, the stratification effect, or Horatio Alger's myth, right?
Hmm.
Horatio Alger was this, I think he was a novelist that first coined this idea of going from rags to riches, right?
Hmm.
This whole narrative that to exist in this country, um, that you can go from rags to riches, this American dream myth that talks about how if you work hard enough, if you put in your own willpower and your ingenuity, that you can, kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I think Martin Luther King raised the point during the civil rights era is, what if you didn't get any boots, right?
Hmm.
It's the same thing if we look metaphorically at life, or this access to upward more mobility as a track, right? Everybody has, as a part of the race of life, right? We're running this race. But my particular questioning is, what if you never had access to be close to a track, right?
Hmm.
If you haven't been there. And so I think this narrative of, you know, everybody has access, which is also a myth, has created this sense of shaming, so to speak, where we begin to question individuals' drive, where we say, well, why aren't you working hard enough? Well, we know that working hard enough right now, even if you're making a minimum wage, won't get you a one-bedroom apartment in no county in the country. You can't afford it, right? That there are people who work 40 to 60, sometimes 80 hours a week, and they still have more month at the end of their money, right?
Hmm.
And so I think these types of myths has contributed to how we view people, mixed in with how we talk about what it means to be poor, right? There was a politicians in the 70s that used his political rhetoric and political framing, right? Using the words to kind of cast how we should think about things. I mean, we see that all the time, or
Yeah.
have seen it all the time. And so there is this story called the welfare queen, right? You can look it up. That was leveraged by a politician to uh, 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 switch how they were doing tax cuts and tax benefits, but he leveraged the story of poor people to communicate poor people get over on the system, right? That's how that derives. What, like poor people only want to benefit and sit back and be lazy and do nothing, right? That came from political rhetoric, and people don't even know the origins of how they believe what they believe. And so I really think that we need to unpack narratives and narrative formations, and narrative formations lend themselves to social construction. Social constructions is what we think about socially about something that we see in the present moment. And most times we are thinking about these things not knowing how they originated, right? And I think that lends itself to how we see people, how we distance ourselves from people, how we criminalize people, because oftentimes we are going based upon some narrative that we received or that has been embedded. and reinforced by media and reinforced by third party persons, and never including the persons that are actually going through those struggles. We need to deconstruct those. And, in my first book, I See You, there's a part in the book where I talk about the 7 whys. You have to why you're why. You have to question yourself over and over again to understand or really unpack how you arrived at this thought. And I use a story of a person experiencing homelessness that we were encountering, and we had a volunteer present, and the person had a cell phone, and the volunteer made this very demeaning statement of how do they get a chance to get a cell phone. And I mean, it was just railing off um, and questioning this person's ability to have access to a cell phone or new shoes, not understanding that somebody could have possibly donated them, etc. And there was this moment where I was just like, yeah, you gotta why you're why. You gotta uh, if you have this thought, you need to ask yourself, well, why do I think this? That will lead you to understanding, well, where did I get this information from? Well, you ask again, well, why does that person, or why do those group of people think this about that? And it kind of leads you down this rabbit trail, so you can like tear apart every single aspect of it, so you can arrive at fully seeing a person as 100% human, right?
Right.
Because I think oftentimes we forget that seeing people is just not enough, because you could see somebody but not have proximity, and that lack of proximity will still lead you to assumptions and judgment.
Hmm.
It just kind of lends itself to King's philosophy of you can't hate someone up close. He says the thing that keeps us apart is because we haven't spent time with one another. And um, most times people don't spend time with other people because they feared them in some way. But my questioning is, when was the last time you've been hurt or harmed by someone experiencing homelessness? As a matter of fact, John Hopkins Hospital did research years ago that said there are people with homes that commit more violent crimes than people who are actually living on the streets. And so we have all of these myths that have formulated and created these false narratives that keep us from loving people in the ways that they should be loved, because we believe lies, right? But Jesus came to say the truth. You should know the truth, and truth shall set you what free,
Right.
right? And sometimes we push back against that truth because we believe the lie so much, and so we aren't free, and we're not having the type of liberty or liberation needed to fully engage and love our neighbors.
Listen, my whole mission in life is to remind people of the freedom that it says in Galatians. In the Message translation, it says not just kind of free, but like free, like for real free. Like you have actually been set free. And we have a saying around here of hurt people might hurt people, but free people, free people. So having said all that,
Amen.
um,
Amen.
we're going to wrap up this conversation with just a couple of lighthearted questions. The first one: God always uses an image of a cup to remind me of the work that he's doing in each one of us. And he's told me time and again that when you bump up against people, we're talking proximity and neighbors and hurt people, when you bump up against somebody, whatever is in you will automatically pour out of you. So I would love to know from you, what is in your cup right now? If you had to identify one thing that you know would pour out, what's one thing in your cup?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Um, I guess at this present moment, I am seeking to be a student, and you know, I often say in entrepreneurship, etc., you have to become a questionary or a questionnaire, right? That at any given moment you can learn from anyone, anywhere, anytime. That you know your next best expert could be someone that you've overlooked the whole time.
Mm,
Uh, they could be someone who has just been seasoned at surviving life. They don't have to necessarily be in the public eye. Your greatest wisdom could come from a child, right? I
mm.
think it's all on our interpretation and how we interpret that and apply it to ourselves. And so, for me, I've just been really observational and trying to learn from the stories of others and listen, um, and just ask the types of questions of people that they aren't normally asked. One, so they can feel seen and heard, but two, so I could learn.
That's good.
You know, yeah.
That's good. All right. Last question. Super lighthearted. If I opened up your playlist of your anthem songs, what would be what's one song that's on that playlist? Just one. I know that's a tough one to try to pull one. Doesn't have to be top, but what's one song on your playlist?
Yeah, it's Outcast, and the song is "In Due Time," and uh, here's why. There's a like a chorus. CeeLo Green uh,
I'm
says, he
smiling
says,
because I was just listening to this song the other
"Yeah,"
day.
it says, "You just keep your faith in me. Don't act impatiently. You'll get there, or you'll get where you need to be in due time. Even when things are slow, hold on and don't let go. I'll give you what I owe in due time." And it's just a song that reminds you to stay committed to the process and the journey. And I don't know. I'm from the ATL, so
Yeah.
it's one of my tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. It's wild. We were watching something the other day, some show, and or no, we were watching the playoffs. And as it was going to commercial break, it came on, and I wasn't paying attention to the playoffs, but I heard the song, and I looked at my husband, was like, "What song was that?" And he just started rolling off his tongue. He
Shout out,
knew all the lyrics. So
yeah, shout out to your husband. That's what's up.
yeah. Right. Yeah. And we're from Ohio, but he is an outcast fanatic. So, well, listen, Terrence, I really do appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'm grateful for your heart, and the legacy that you're leaving. And just to echo what you've said of the opportunity that you get to lead your children in a way that you were not, breaking those generational curses, reparenting, just changing just the fabric of our culture, starting in our homes, because that's where all this work begins, right? But then letting your son see the example of what it looks like to not just talk about it but be about it. And I'm grateful. I pray that this is not the last time that you and I get a chance to talk. um I'm like, my Amazon cart is like stacked with all your books, and I have like all these other books to read, so I'm like, I can't grab them all. um but I love what you said about being a student, because I am a student and a researcher at heart, and I can't wait to dive into just the work that you've done. Really just to learn it, and then just pour it out wherever I can, whoever I bump into. But I'm, in all honesty, I'm convicted just with a lot of what you just talked about, of really, am I connected to my neighbors, and am I paying more attention to who is just around me? You know what I mean? So I appreciate you. I want to honor your time and your commitment, and let you get to your family. And if there's anything that I can do to really help you move your mission, this microphone is yours. Like, that is no exaggeration. If you ever want to just come and just really educate us, you can have my microphone. So,
Well, I appreciate it, and definitely grateful to be a part of your community. And I hope whoever listens to this is inspired. And I would just leave people with this: you are needed.
amen. Amen. There's no follow up with that. Well, y'all, I hope that you were blessed by this episode. And as always, like we start the show, we finish the show. I pray that this conversation really did help you to adjust your focus. And it is never me pointing my finger at you to shame you. In fact, I say shame off you. And I invite you to lean in. If you have to go back, play it again and take notes. Take notes. In the show notes, you will find all of the information to stay connected to Terence, to grab his books off of Amazon. And I really do pray that this gets you out into your community to serve and to look like Jesus. Until the next time, y'all, you be blessed, and we will chat with you later.